lead at Frontera devs, and today I have a workshop for GitHub and Git, and I hope you enjoy. So thanks for coming. So yeah, let's get started. So first off, let me show you what we're going over today. So what is GitHub and Git? The second thing will be anatomy of GitHub and Git. Third one is how to use GitHub, and the fourth is how to use Git. And at the end, we'll be doing a short demo on how to use GitHub and Git together and pushing a project that I have to GitHub using Git. So should be good. And at the end, also you can let me know if you have any questions, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. So number one, what is GitHub and Git? So the best way I could explain this through Zoom is with a scenario. And imagine we have three people, Robin, Ted, and Lily, and they just started working on a project and they finished it, and they now realize that they need to make changes to it. So Robin is like, I need to make some changes to this project. And Ted and Lily also need to make changes to this project. So there's only one copy of this file, this project that they have. Let's say it's the new Battlefield game. And they're like, well, I need to make these changes to it. So only one person has it. So Robin has the copy of it. And she's like, I need to add these maps to this game. So then she adds them and she's like, okay, I'm done. And then she sends it over to Ted, and Ted adds whatever he needs to add. He's like, I'm done. And then he adds it. He sends it to Lily, and Lily does whatever she needs to do, and she says she's done. And you can see how this is very slow. So the issues are, it's very slow, it's inefficient, the management becomes more difficult, and there's no redos. And I'll explain a little bit more of that soon. So imagine if Facebook or Instagram or anything that involves a software only had one master file, and each time you wanted to make changes to it, someone would have to send it to you, like that, the real one, and you would make those changes and then send it back. And it's just a big problem because security wise, there's a lot of leaks and it's very slow. So how can we solve this? So let's say we have our same three people, Robin, Ted, and Lily. And the big thing here is we have a master file that's located on a server. And this master file could be on a cloud-based server for now. And then each person can get a copy of it, and they can make changes to it whenever they need to, offline too. So Robin says, we can all make changes now. Cool, finally. Yeah, it's good tech. So with the power of Git, you're able to request a file, a copy of the master file, and from the server, and you're able to do all the changes needed. So there's something called a pull request, which is like asking for a copy of it. And the following function, commands that I'm about to show, I'll go into more detail soon. So they each have a copy of the file now. Git Add, that's just a command I'll go into a bit. It's like adding files to the staging environment. And then Git Commit is committing, which is like a checkpoint for all the changes you've made. And finally, Git Push, which pushes it to the master file. So moving on. Instead of having a server maybe located on a cloud-based computer, I mean a cloud-based software server, there's something called GitHub. So it's like a hub for your work, your master file, and anybody could get it, a copy of the master file from GitHub. And that's where GitHub comes into play, and Git and GitHub work very well together. So as I stated before, GitHub is a web application that hosts remote Git repositories. It allows for team collaboration and it's a community for developers. Continuing on. So Git is a free open source version control system. It keeps track of what is modified in the code and allows you to revert to older code versions if needed. So the first thing, it says a free open source version control system. So it allows you to look at previous versions if needed to. And a good example of this would be Instagram. I think if any of you have used Instagram this summer, you're going through a lot of this visual changes, and a lot of users didn't like it, so they had to revert to the old version. And that wouldn't have been possible without Git or GitHub. Or it would have been, but it would have taken a lot longer. They would have to make it from scratch. And with version control, it's very easy to go back. So moving on, the anatomy of GitHub and Git. So a local repository, these are just the stuff we'll be going over. A local repository lives on your machine, and you have access to the project and the versions of it, and it's only on your machine. So maybe if you're working on a project on your own, this would be good. But if you wanted to work in a group, the best thing would be to have a remote repository where each person can get a copy of that file, and it just works a lot better. Staging is like a step before committing. It's a staging environment where you push your files, and you can push multiple files to it before you commit it. And commits are like checkpoints or bundles of changes. So after you commit it, you merge it and you push it to the main branch, the main file. So branching I'll go into right now, and merging is basically merging the branches, which I'll go into right now in the next slide. So whenever I think of branching, I think of this TV show, any TV show that involves like timelines or movies like Avengers, or this one is Loki. And the timeline splits, and that's a branch. So that's kind of how using GitHub and Git work. You can make a branch of the master file, and you can make your own changes to it. And then merging is just merging back to the master file. So that's what branching and merging are. So how to use GitHub. So these are the steps to using GitHub. It's I'll have this PowerPoint available. So you just make an account, make a repository, and I'll go over this in a second in the demo that I'll explain after this. How to use Git. You download Git, open terminal if you're a Mac user, or command prompt, I think, if you're a Windows user. And then type Git to confirm, and I think it's Git version to see the version you have. So how to turn your project into a Git repository. So let's say you have a project on your computer and you want to push it to GitHub using Git. So once you install Git, you will use these commands to push your project to GitHub. And in that demo, I'll show you how each of them work. So git init is like initializing your Git repo that you made on GitHub. Git add is adding your files to the staging environment. Git status is checking where your files are currently. Git commit is committing those files. And then git remote add origin is a specific instruction that connects your GitHub to your machine using the URL that it generates. And then git push origin master is pushing all those files to the master file, which is a remote repository on your GitHub. So make a new repository and upload files is what I'll be going over right now. And the process of pushing code on Git, as I stated before, you have a working directory and you add stuff to your staging environment, and you could add it, you could commit it to your local repository and then push it to the remote repository. And then this is another picture of branching and using the master file. And this is a cheat sheet that I provided. It comes in handy, but you really don't need to know all of these commands. There's only a couple that you need to know, and if you don't, you could just look them up, and it's pretty simple. So that's the end of the PowerPoint. If you want to follow along with this demo I'm about to show, you can. All right, everyone's still here. Cool. So first thing you want to do is go to GitHub, and let's say you have a project on your desktop, and you want to upload it to GitHub using Git. So you want to click this plus arrow, click new repository, and then name it whatever you want to name it. For this one, I'll just call it workshop, and we'll make it public. And then these are some options you could do. README files are suggested to add, but for this demonstration, I won't be adding them. So we create our repository. And remember how I said you don't have to memorize it. Basically, it gives you these commands. It's like a helpful list of the commands you need to use. But you don't have to use all of them. I'll tell you the main ones that you do just to upload your stuff to GitHub. So let's go to terminal, my terminal. So right now I have my terminal opened up, and basically I just changed my directory to where I have my projects stored. And let's see. So I want to push my workshop project. So I'm gonna go into it. Now I have two files that I want to send to my GitHub repository. So the first thing I need to do is do something called Git and Git. It's initializing your repo here on your machine. So that should make your repository on your machine. The next step you should do is, after you follow this, is Git Add. And you don't need to add a README. It's the best thing to do is with the files you have is Git dot. It basically adds all the files in your folder. So a good way to check what's going on is to do a Git Status. As you can see, there's two files in green that are ready to be committed and right now. And that .ds_store file, don't worry about that. That's something that happens in the Macs. If you're curious about that, I'll send you a link to a website explaining it, but it's not gonna be a concern right now. So the next step to uploading to our GitHub repository is...
Hey, Frank, we can't see your terminal.
Oh, you can't?
No, you're gonna have to stop the screen share and then like do it again, but for the whole screen.
Oh man, okay, you guys have said something.
It's all good. But you pretty much followed these steps, right? To get in it, Git add, Git commit.
Yeah, for sure. But I was just trying to explain these
Good.
to more detail. So, all right, can you guys see that?
Yes.
All right, sounds good.
If you can zoom in, zoom in. I think Mac is easy to zoom in.
You can just do Command+.
All right, that looks good. All right, like I said before, I guess we'll have to do this again. Well, I think I was at step of committing. Basically, I did Git init, and then I did Git Add dot, and the next step is to Git commit. So Git commit, and then you can name it whatever you want. I'll just name mine first. So as you can see, the files have been committed, and the next step to do is to do git remote add the origin. And in the steps that it shows when you make a repository on GitHub, it should have this with the URL already like made for you. So you just copy paste that, and that's my URL. So this origin is added, and that's basically connecting like my machine origin to the GitHub yeah. So that looks good. And the last thing to do is to do a git push to the master. And sometimes main doesn't work. Master. And it looks like it was successful. So we take a look at this. If I refresh it, it should be here. Good, they're here. So that's how you upload files from your desktop or your machine to GitHub using Git. And yeah, that's already that. And if you have any questions, let me know. You could type them out, or you could say it out loud if you want.
So once it's on GitHub, can other people work off of that, like partners, friends? Once the code's on there?
Yeah, if you have access to it, you could just do a request, and you should, if they allow it, then you should be able to make changes to it, and then you could do some of the git commands to merge it to the main file. All right, I'll let you guys have like 1 more minute, maybe 2. And if you can think of any more questions, if not, I think that should be it. Will changes in one branch affect others, or are they completely separate? So let's say you make a branch from, like you make a pull request and you have your own branch. So that won't affect the other person's branch. And that's like the beauty of using Git, because you could work on a copy of the master branch anywhere you want. You could also work on it offline. All you need to be online for is the actual pushing to GitHub part. So does that answer your question? All right, cool. Yeah, it's a good thing it's Friday and next week's Thanksgiving, so should be pretty chill. Well, think that's going to be all the questions, right? I think I'll post this PowerPoint in Discord chat. Oh, one more question. Even after authorizing the merge, how are incompatibilities handled? So you're saying like you accidentally pushed a something, just something you wasn't supposed to be pushed to the master file. Is that what you're saying? Yes. Okay. Well, in that case, you could the beauty of Git is that it's a version control, so you could revert back to an older version. Yeah, it does revert, which is pretty cool. You can revert back to old versions. That's why many, like the majority of people, need a version control software, and Git is like the most famous one. So yeah. Does that answer your question? Cool. Cool. Well, I think that's all the questions for today. Again, thank you so much for coming to this workshop. I hope you learned something. And I'll be sharing this GitHub and Git PowerPoint. Also, let me know if you have any questions. You can just message me. And yeah, thanks for coming.